with the resources and storages all around the center, causing the golems to get distracted. These have always been particularly susceptible to mass witch attacks, but now with the level 3 witches, man, it's going to go down pretty fast. So there is a lava hound in the clan castle, but Geo engages from the lava hound area. That actually is a smart idea because it allows his wizards plenty of time to take down the lava hound. So he only has one free spell. He's going to be able to use that free spell on the second Inferno tower, the far side Inferno tower. So there's a lot to pay attention to here. On this raid, I want you to focus on two things. Focus on the witch and golem deployment area and the spread, and then focus on when he uses his free spell. You can see he totally ignores the first Inferno tower with the first free spell. That's because the first Inferno tower has a lot of targets, meaning that it has the golems to latch onto, hopefully one of the heroes to latch onto, as well as all the skeletons that are summoned by all the witches that have not been killed yet. None have died off. Now, the more critical freeze, or the only freeze in this case, is going to be on the far side Inferno tower. So that is a strategy key. Whenever possible, use your freeze, especially if you only have one, on the far side Inferno tower, not the one you engage in. Now, there is an exception to that rule. I said we will be covering exceptions, and that is if there's a lava hound that you engage midway through the battle, meaning you don't attack like Geo into the clan castle. So you have to engage that lava hound right at the same time you're engaging that first Inferno tower. Then it might be a good idea to freeze the first Inferno tower as well. In those cases, if you're going to attack far side clan castle, you might need to bring 2 free spells. Now, this raid by Razorbacks is against another popular base design. I'll tell you what, I don't think these base designs are going to be too popular going forward, especially to hold off Town Hall 11 attacks. And you can see Razor's just going to make a nice, like I said in the first replay, one thing to note on both of these attacks here is you just want to create a nice funnel for your witches before deploying them. Make sure, A, there's a nice funnel so they all stick together, and B, make sure that you have plenty of protection for them as far as distracting those mortars. You want to make sure that the mortars in the area where you deploy the troops are distracted by the golems. So in this case, the mortars in the corner were targeting the golems, and the witches had enough spread behind them where they were able to go ahead and not be a factor for the witches. So we get to the center of the base here. The Rage usually is dropped as the first spell. Between the freeze and the rage spells, obviously forgetting about the jump spells, that depends on where you engage the base. But the rage, I like to drop that just before I drop the first freeze spell. So that's my own preference, but think about it. On rage, not only are the witches summoning those skeletons faster once they go down, but they're also, all the skeletons are doing a plus 170% damage per second. That is really huge, so that can really help take down the first Inferno tower when the attack gets more hairy in the center of the base there. Now, the Grand Warden, we haven't talked too much about him yet. You can see Max Grand Warden in this attack, and boy was he powerful. A lot of troops still alive at the end, and the Grand Warden ability is something that we're still playing around with, the Eternal Tome. Obviously, the life aura is dramatically affecting these raids. These raids almost look too easy, and in fact they are easy, but a lot of that is the passive ability, the life aura of the Grand Warden. Now, it doesn't seem too dramatic because, let's face it, you're not toggling anything, there's no cool artwork, all it is a range around the Grand Warden, but he's helping keep all those skeletons alive just a little bit longer, and that actually dramatically affects the raid. So it's really important on these mass witch attacks to keep the Grand Warden along the same funnel, along the same line, the directional path, I should say, as the witches. So make sure you deploy your heroes all kind of clumped up at the same time as the witches, with enough spacing in between the golems and the heroes and the witches, so that way double or single giant bombs don't absolutely put a big speed bump in your raid by taking out all the witches. So very important to note there, spacing is huge. An Eternal Tome ability should be used as like an offensive freeze spell in a way, because what it does is it protects all your troops, gives them full invincibility against Inferno Towers being the main factor on these mass witch raids. So very important to use it almost like the same timing you would use a freeze spell. Now, obviously, this also protects against giant bombs, so a really savvy attacker can kind of use it as an emergency switch. If you see a giant bomb appear, you can and a bunch of witches are in that range, you can immediately protect them with the Eternal Tome, and that's another way to use the Grand Warden ability. So there's a lot of flexibility